Now this wouldn't be a good glue video unless my entire bench was covered in dots of glue. Hey y'all, I'm James Wright, and welcome to my shop. Today I want to talk about hide glue. Now, recently I did a video on making your own hide glue out of rawhide, dog chew toys. So if you want to see that video, I'll leave a link to that down below. But I wanted to kind of go through and talk about different types of hide glue, how they're used, when to use them, and what are the differences in them. It's my goal to make this confusing topic something that's a little simpler and easier to understand. So let's dive in and look at the different types of glue. Now, hide glue generally comes in 3 different strengths. You'll often see them as gram strength: 192, 251, and 315. Or if you just think about it, 1, 2, and 3. 1 being the weakest, 3 being the strongest. This is commonly used for your veneers, your thin surfaces, things that really don't need a whole lot of glue strength. This is your general use, what most people are going to use for their everyday work. And if you really have a high stress area, something that's going to be breaking, then your 315 is what you would want to use for that. In general, they're all kind of the exact same thing though, other than their binding strength. Their strength is determined by their purity from the hide glue. Usually the first batch to come out of the hide, you'll get the 315 out of that. The second batch, you'll get your 251, and then the third batch that has some other impurities in it and things that make it a little weaker, that is the 192. Now the problem with traditional hide glue is, in its dry state, it will last for just about ever on the shelf. But as soon as you put water into it, it has a tendency to go rancid. It only lasts for a week or two in its gelatin form. And so that makes it a little bit more difficult. Several companies have made liquid hide glue, and this is Old Brown. It's probably the most common. It still needs to be warmed up. It's still kind of in a gelatin state in this, although it can be used. It's a bit tough the way it is. The other thing that this adds is it adds in urea. That gives it a longer working time, whereas this, the moment it cools, it becomes hard again. So you have to work with it before it cools down. With this, you can work with it for a good long time. Then a couple other companies have come out with this, and this you don't even have to heat up. You just squeeze it out of the bottle and it goes to town. This also has a longer working time because it works at room temperature, and so it actually stays for a long period of time. So if you have a joint that's really hard to wiggle together and you're going to need a lot of time working on it, this might actually be a good choice because it takes a good long while for the glue to set up. So how exactly do you go about using it? For the Titebond or other glue that is liquid in the bottle, you just squeeze it and go. It works just like PVA. It is just as simple, and once it dries out, it's done. For the Old Brown or other glues with urea, basically all you need to do is warm them up. So I actually use these cup warmers, a USB cup warmer. I put a mug in here and let the water warm up to the mug temperature, which actually ends up being somewhere around like 120 or so. You're supposed to get it somewhere between 120 and 140. Just let it soak in that and it's ready to go. Other than that, you just use it just like you would with regular Titebond glue. Squeeze it out. As soon as it cools down, it becomes hard, and then it dries out and becomes solid. The confusing part is, how do you get this crystalline glue, this dry stuff, into this? How do you actually work down these chips that you've made into a functioning glue? And traditionally you do that with a double boiler. I used to have a double boiler, but the cast iron broke when it hit the ground, and I'm not happy. But I recently picked up this. This is actually a wax warmer, and you can set the temperature exactly on here. You want to heat it up to somewhere around 130 to 145 or so. I wouldn't take it over 150. But before we heat it up, we need to actually mix it, and you want to mix it cold. So I'm going to take this, and I'm going to pull out however much glue I'm going to use. I just kind of estimate that and I throw it into the top. And then I'll just add some water and cover the glue. I don't want a lot in there. There's actually a bit too much water, but oh well. If you add too much water, then it just becomes liquid and easier to move around. If you add too little water, then it becomes too stiff, and so you can always balance it back and forth. If you add too much water, then it will evaporate when it heats up. But yeah, that's actually not too bad. That's right about where I want it. You can see how the gel is starting to heat it, starting to absorb it in. And we're just going to let this sit cold until it gets into its gelatin state. I'll bring you back and show you that. Then after a few minutes of setting, it gets to this gelatin stage where it's all kind of clumped together. If you watch the video on how I made it, this is the stage just before going and drying it out. So we're basically reversing it and adding water back in. So now that it has all been mixed in and it's starting to get to the gelatin, now I can turn on the pot here and let it warm up. Come back a few minutes later and it'll be ready to use. So after letting it warm up for a few minutes, we're looking for consistency, something around that drippiness. It's a bit runny, but not terribly. It's still holding quite a bit on the brush. And it goes on fairly well. And then for application, you just brush it on. And the nice thing about this system is if I want to glue it somewhere else, I can pull this pot out and go where I need to and glue it up. So apply it, glue it just like before, and once it sets up, you just have to wait for it to dry, which is just a couple hours, and she's ready to go. Good and solid glue and really nice and flexible. So the basic idea is you come in the morning, you turn the pot on, a few minutes later it's ready to use, it's heating up, and you can just leave it there heating up throughout the day. If it gets too thick, you add a little bit more water. If it gets too thin, you add a little bit more water. If it's too thin for your taste, you just let it sit for a little bit longer and let the water evaporate from it. And you can let it run. When you're done, you turn it off and you leave it alone. It'll come back later and it will be a jelly sitting in the bottom of the pot. And it's ready to go for the next time. You can leave it as a jelly for several weeks before it starts to go bad on you, and you'll definitely smell the difference when it goes bad. Some of the benefits of high glue, number one, it has a really nice bonding time. It has a bit of a slip and slide to it as it doesn't like set. Number two, you can do a rub surface. So if you want two boards you're joining together, you can actually rub them back and forth and then suddenly a little grip. And that gripping point, they're done. You don't need to clamp them. They're glued together and you can go on to the next glue up. It's really nice and fast. As soon as it cools down, it starts to solidify and grabs. Also, it is finish transparent. So if you get some glue on the surface, you can scrape off the excess, but anything that's left on there will allow the finish to penetrate through the glue so you don't get that spot you would with if you're using like a PVA. There's a lot of other benefits to it, and you'll be seeing me using it a lot more now that I have a good working pot, making this a lot easier to use than an old double boiler. So I hope you like this video with a little bit of information. I know there's going to be some more ideas out there, some more questions. Go ahead and leave them down below. I will be doing all of these glues in the upcoming big glue test, so we will be seeing what the actual differences is between homemade and store-bought and the Titebond stuff. Which is better? I don't know. We'll find out. I do want to say thank you to the patrons on Patreon. You guys are the reason why I can keep putting out videos like this. If you'd like to find out more about Patreon or help out keeping this channel going, you can do so right down there. Also, if you want to subscribe, you can hit the logo or see my second channel where I put some other behind-the-scenes videos and things of that nature. That's about it for today. Until next time, have a wonderful day.